Welcome to the Kingdom Business Forum, a program where we empower believers to build kingdom businesses that advance the Great Commission. I'm Vicki Norris.
I'm Patrice Sagay.
Now, I met Patrice when I went through his biblical entrepreneurship training program. It personally transformed me and my business. Since then, I operate with the kingdom in mind. That's why I've joined him in this program, because now I'm passionate about helping you discover the power of kingdom principles for your business. Well, Patrice, today on the program, we have, I think, a little bit unusual of an interview. We have a counselor in our studio today.
Yes.
A personal counselor. And, what does this have to do with business? I mean, when I think about counseling, you think about sort of on the personal side. Mm-hmm. You think about maybe marriages in crisis. You think about relationship issues. How can a weakened personal life or character, how can that compromise business?
Yeah, it's major. If you don't have, if the person is not together, as we say in BE, God has to first transform the person before the person can build the enterprise. And so I think our guest today is really going to deal with the whole issue of helping with that personal transformation, particularly as we talk about our theme this month, doing business as a family, the stress of business on the marriage, on the relationship. He's an expert when it comes to family issues and marital issues. How does the entrepreneur, how's the kingdom business guy,
or woman,
that's right, walk in dominion without, while overcoming the pressure and the stress that can come on the marriage. I often say, Vicky, as you know, that you cannot walk in dominion without walking in oneness with your mate. Mm-hmm. Because
I believe that.
The more success you realize, the more it reveals the crack on the marriage. So, and I guess today is going to help us to know how to make sure that we keep that union together, even while we are walking in the marketplace.
I think that's one of the things that's really unique about biblical entrepreneurship and really about our program here at the Kingdom Business Forum is that we genuinely want to help business believers think, walk, live, and act differently. We want them to be transformed, and Amen. We know that you cannot be successful in business if there are some of these obstacles in your life that are causing a fissure between you and God. And so I'm excited about our program today. I think it's really going to help some of you out there. We've got some really hot topics coming up here with our guest, Jay McCall. Now, Jay McCall, he is a counselor. He earned his Master of Divinity with a major in counseling psychology from Western Evangelical Seminary, now at George Fox University. He has 2 years postgraduate training in clinical psychology and a Doctor of Psychology program. He's recognized as a board-certified Christian counselor and a certified clinical sexual addiction specialist by the Board of Christian Professional and Pastoral Counselors. That's the hot topic I'm talking about. This gentleman, Jay McCall, specializes in sexual addiction, a topic a lot of people don't want to discuss, but is very important in our culture today and very it just damages the fabric of our culture, I believe. Jay's current counseling practice utilizes his experience in counseling and the mental health field, his experience in Christian ministry, and from his own failures. Jay struggled for years with the bondage of sexual sin and addiction himself, so he knows what he's talking about. Through God's mercy and grace and through good counsel and accountability, he is now able to help others. He now has a platform. God has given him a platform to do that. Jay's counseling work focuses upon men battling with addictions, primarily sexual addiction, men who were abused as boys, and men who suffer from depression and anxiety, and marriages in crisis. At a New Life Christian Counseling, He created and managed a comprehensive Christian sexual addiction treatment program. This Christ-centered outpatient treatment program includes individual counseling, group counseling, couples counseling, recovery groups for partners of addicts, a training group for Christian leaders, and intensive workshops. So do I have your attention yet, listeners? This is a big topic. Jay and his associate and business partner, Hannah Fisher, have combined their very busy private practices to form a new Christian counseling treatment center called the Four Rivers. This new center focuses on treating individuals, couples, and families struggling with issues around attachment, trauma, and sexual addiction. Welcome to our program, Jay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here. Now, Jay, I've just read your bio, and I would love you to share with our listeners a little bit about the Four Rivers Christian Counseling Treatment Center. What makes it different? What you specialize in? And I want to say first to all of our listeners, if you're just tuning in, you're listening to the Kingdom Business Forum, where we help believers in business build kingdom businesses that advance the Great Commission. So, Jay, share with us a little bit about the Four Rivers.
Well, Four Rivers is it's a unique approach to dealing with sexual addiction, as well as and other mental health disorders, in that we focus a lot on the attachment issues. And if you think about it, attachment is really something that we struggle with, all of us. Matter of fact, that's the issue that God has come to deal with us. We're separated from God through our sin. And God wanted to bring us back to himself through Jesus Christ. And through that sacrifice and through us believing in Christ, we can then be reattached, or we can be one with God again. Mm-hmm. And so separation is a major issue that we all face. And in our relationships, in our families, in our interpersonal relationships, if we're not able to attach with someone effectively, if we're not able to have that emotional connection, you're going to find continued problems in those relationships, where what I face in dealing with the area of sexual addiction, men who are, they're somewhat attached to their wives, but they're going other places to find that type of attachment. And so that's kind of what we're looking at in the Four Rivers. My associate, Hannah Fisher, deals with children and families that are dealing with issues of attachment. And so we see it with young kids, and if it's not taken care of, I see it with the adults. Mm-hmm. And
so it's a spiritual problem.
It's a spiritual problem, and foundationally, yes, but it also then goes to how we relate emotionally and psychologically with one another. If I can't attach spiritually, I've got problems. If I can't attach spiritually and emotionally, I've got big problems. And so those are the things that we look at.
So the Four Rivers then, you and Hannah together in your practice, you help individuals, couples, I mean, if the couple wants to be helped together,
right.
and you help them sort of work through these issues?
Yes, very much so.
Okay.
Yeah, and a big part of that, of course, is trust. And if you can't trust someone, you will not be able to attach to them. In a relationship, there's only three options. You're either going to trust in the relationship, or you're going to control in the relationship, or you're going to detach. Those are the three options you have relationally in an interpersonal relationship. So for a healthy couple that's able to trust, you have mutual trusting. They can give freely. Mm-hmm. They have that sense of always thinking the best of the other person because they trust them. And yet, in other relationships that are not healthy, when there's a sense of question of trust and they're not feeling comfortable, they're feeling anxious, they're feeling stressed in the relationship, they're going to try to control a lot of times. They want to control that person. They want to know, hey, what's going on? You need to let me know. Let me see your phone. Who are you talking to? There's going to be issues around trying to control the behavior of the other person. And generally when that happens, the person is trying to be controlled, they tend to want to move away, so they're going to try to detach, because now they don't feel they can trust the person who's trying to control them. So you end up with just a great deal of problems in these relationships where it can't be trust-based, and being able to feel that sense of, I can trust this person with my life. And if you can't feel that, then there's going to be some serious problems.
Jay, let's now bring this to the business.
Yes.
How does that issue of addiction, marital issues, lack of trust. How do you see that impacting the business?
Yes. Well, I work with a lot of couples.
Or the business impacting, making that even worse?
Well, yes, I do work with a lot of couples that are in business, and their families in the business that they're trying to operate and own. And those individuals, a lot of times, one, they weren't prepared for going into this as a family. They just think, hey, we can do this. It's not going to change us. Yeah, it changes you. Whenever you take on a business as well as a family, you're going to have a confusion about the roles. You're going to have confusion about separating when does business start, when does family start. And so with that, a lot of times you can have a lot of difficulty with those roles between husband, wife, kids, and such, to the point where there's a lot of, difficult feelings. We need to improve our communication. They don't have that skill already worked out, and so there's more conflict. Once that starts to happen on a consistent basis, then you can also have a breakdown of trust. Now, as I mentioned, those families, those relationships and marriage that are dealing with trust issues, which I see a lot of, when they're in a business together, that's when it really gets to be somewhat difficult, because if you can't trust your spouse and they're the one that's having to go do some traveling for the business or even making sales calls or whatever, and the other spouse is there in the office not trusting them, where are they at, what's going on, do you think they're really focused on business anymore? No. And so one of the things that I've seen is very healthy and successful businesses are eroded by lack of trust in the relationship. So those individuals need to be in counseling. They need to be able to deal with those issues and get them, worked out, because their business are going to fail. And I've seen that happen.
So along the lines of what Patrice asked, you've seen a business basically be brought down because of sexual addiction issues, because of how it's impacted the family and the spiritual life of those involved.
Definitely.
Wow.
Yeah.
So hopefully our listeners are really keying into that really God does care about the personal stuff in our lives, not just about the business, because we can't succeed without the character in place to rightly operate our business with a sound mind, too.
Sound mind. That's exactly it. And just giving an example, met with a couple recently. They've started a business, and there's been trust issues in this relationship. And I've been working with them as a couple and also the husband. And so they have this new business where it's located is in a place where there's some questionable activities. Now, in the city of Portland, we are the #1 adult entertainment industry capital of the world, where we have more adult entertainment establishments than any other large city in America per capita.
So if you didn't know that, Patrice, welcome to Portland.
And so this new business is located, kind of in the heart of some of those, establishments. And the wife, of course, where are you at? What are you doing? There's a sense I want to control. The trust is starting to break down. And for the husband, I'm just trying to do my business. I'm just trying to make this thing work. And she's on me all the time because she wants to know where I'm at. How can I, make my wife happy and give her that at the same time, try to make my business work and not feel like, I'm just going out of my mind. And that was where you talk about the sound mind. Very difficult if you haven't worked through these things.
So you've seen probably a lot of couples and individuals affected by sexual addiction.
Yes.
What is your advice to a couple or family who's struggling with this? Like, how do you approach it? Because to me, just as a lay person, I'm thinking, don't you have to get to the heart of the spiritual problem first? Because you can address all the behavior you want all day long. And really, that's just, that's going to be fruitless. That's going to be in vain if you haven't corrected the internal problems.
Yes, exactly. I mean, that's a big part of what, we start with is that the individual, and, I work with men, but we also see this in women as well. the starting point really is to be broken before God. You know, we just go to King David and look at, you know, when he was confronted by Nathan the prophet and the brokenness of David. You know, I have my guys, and they have to read Psalm 51 every day. You have to be broken. It doesn't work any other way. And I can tell you from my own experience that it was that brokenness that began to change me, that brokenness before God, that God, I've blown it. I need you more now than I've ever needed you. And really, it's a spiritual revival that has to take place in that individual for this to work. Because this addiction is so serious, so deadly, and I believe the enemy's out to destroy the church by this addiction.
Through its men. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree with that strongly. And I like what you said, spiritual revival. And, you know, it reminds me of Romans, the first part of Romans, where it's talking about, you know, all sin really begins when we exchange the truth of God for a lie.
Yes.
And so to me, probably a lot of what you do, I'm guessing, is helping people uncover those lies that they've believed. And I think the first and foremost is positionally who you are. Because if you see yourself, you know, as a victim rather than as the sonship that
Right.
you have, is that kind of how you...
It's a big part of it, Vicki, and really, sexual addiction is fueled by two things. One is deception and the lie that we believe, okay, that we've accepted, that this is something that can do something for us. It gives us something of substance and value, and all it does is it makes us basically thirsty for more and never satisfies us. But we think it does. And so there's this lie that we live, and a big part of what we deal with, of course, is just as you said, you know, who are you in Christ? You know, who are you in that position? At the same time, we look at the lies that they've had to believe, and we tear down the fantasy. One of the things I talk about with my guys is we have to poison the fantasy you've been believing. And we poison it with truth. We're going to
Amen.
bring the truth into
Amen.
this. And once you see the truth, okay, then you're going to be able to walk away from it. Because if we know something is a lie, we won't believe it. See, Satan didn't tempt anybody, didn't tempt, you know, Adam and Eve with a lie. He tempted them with a partial truth. See, if we think it could be true, if there's a partial truth there, we will jump on it and we can believe it. But if we know it's a lie, we won't believe it. So I'm going to hold up my pen here, and if I said, this is a cement truck, you won't believe it. But if I told you this pen, this is a $10 pen, you might believe it. It's a $6 pen, but you know, but you might believe it because it's partially true. It is a pen, you see, and that's what a lot of times what happens with us dealing with sexual addiction is that we believe a partial truth, and we get deceived, and it works in our minds, and it becomes very intricate. And so the whole look at counseling is that you have to help them renew their mind. Okay, Romans 12:2 says, "Don't be conformed to the world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind,
Right.
so that you may prove what is the perfect will of God." That's amazing to me, always, when I say it. Prove the perfect will of God. We're going to be able to do that with a renewed mind, and that's a major factor in dealing with sexual addiction. The second part of sexual addiction that fuels it is secrecy. We don't talk about it. We don't let it out. You know, I know churches that are struggling in this area. They don't want to talk about it. You know, I've been on college campuses. They're struggling with it. You know, they're male students. I've had, you know, them as a number of their students as clients. No one wants to talk about it. This is something we want to keep contained. We don't want to talk about because of the shame of it.
Wow. Jay, of course, there are many who suffer sexual addiction in the Bible.
Yes.
You know, very famously David.
Yeah.
We could even say his son Solomon.
Yeah. Yes.
Now, question, I know that sexual addiction is a big issue for kingdom business people because
Yes.
I travel a lot.
Yes.
And so you tend to want what you can't have, and you travel, you get hungry.
That's right.
You know, and as a man, you know, and if things aren't not working well at home, then
right.
there's that temptation. But what other, would you say, vices or what other issues do kingdom business people need to be cautious or be concerned about when it comes to running a business as a family? In terms of, besides sexual addiction, what are some of the other things.
Well, I think you want to look at, in a lot of times what will happen in families with that is the area of that the business becomes the new spouse.
That's right. The other wife.
The other wife, or it could be, let's take it that way, it could be the other husband.
The other husband. That's
And I've seen, relationships where, we talk about what's going on, and I'll ask the husband, so have you talked to your wife here about your other lover? And he looks at me strangely like, what are you talking about? I said, well, the job, because everything you're telling me is you're living for that, you're not living for her anymore. And that becomes, I think a big factor for entrepreneurs in general, because you have to pour so much of your life into it. But if you don't keep that balance, you don't keep the focus on your marriage relationship, you will end up having a new lover. And you have to look at that and avoid that to keep your marriage successful. Because as you guys are talking, if you don't have that part of your life together, it's all going to fall apart.
How does that tie in when they both work in the business? How does that, or any other factor?
Well, it does. Even though they're both there, they're both working. You're going to find that one of them is going to.
Right.
They're grabbing hold of it. They're in a sense embracing.
So there's still that level of competition.
The competition.
I may be in there only because that's the only way to get closer to that person.
That's right.
Well, Jay.
Yes.
How do you help people in dealing with this? In like 30 seconds, just kind of give us a sense of how you can help business people, kingdom business people, in addressing what are the issues and bringing balance to their families.
Right. I think the first thing is let's deal with reality. Most people don't want to deal with reality. They want to deny what's going on. So you want to be able to give them some truth of what is going on in the relationship and be able to look at those factors that we've been talking about in terms of just how are you dealing with your relationship? How is your communication? How are you, as a couple, how are you, in a sense, nurturing one another during this process? You're nurturing a new baby, which is this business, but how are you nurturing one another? And we want to look at those behaviors and the time you're putting into it, the energy you're putting into it, so that the marriage can be strong. So that's where we start at, just kind of looking at what's really going on. What do you see happening in the relationship?
Jay, we look forward to having you back, man.
Thank you.
A wonderful issue, and I know that many people are blessed by hearing what you had to say today.
Yeah.
God bless you.
Oh, thank you.
Well, the other lover. Would Trevor say that about restoring order in you, Vicki?
I believe there was a time he might have.
Wow.
But
I know. Gina.
Not by the grace of God, not anymore.
Yeah. Same thing here. I'm Patrice Sage. I'm recovering.
Better finish that sentence, Patrice.
Recovering data of the business. How about that?
Recovering data. I like that. This is such a big, heavy, weighty topic because really, Patrice, what we've talked about today is that we got a lot of business people running around out there living two lives.
That's right.
Living two lives. And if you bear the banner of Christ, you got to deal with this.
Vicki, I was sharing with my wife about the danger of traveling in Europe. Do you know that when you travel in Europe, the television, how do you call it, the porn shows, whatever, after 10 o'clock, it's on there. They don't have the restriction we have here. Of course, the danger of traveling in America is that it's there. You have to pay for it at least, but it's still there. So kingdom business people have to be cautious because the devil, if he cannot destroy the business, he'll destroy your marriage and your family.
That's right.
And by that, he destroyed the business.
This is a cultural problem that we have, but most importantly, this is a spiritual problem that we have. We hope that we've at least scratched the surface of a very important topic today in our series of doing business as a family. We've tried to help you look at a personal obstacle that can prevent success in your business, and that is struggling with addiction, specifically sexual addiction. We really appreciate you tuning in. It is our goal at the Kingdom Business Forum to help you build a kingdom business. Thank you for listening to the Kingdom Business Forum, and please join us on our fan page on Facebook.